Good evening. Sorry about the delay. I sent my slides and I didn't send my notes, so just 1 second here. All right, so we're going to jump right in. I have a lot of material, but I wasn't planning to present tonight. We were going to have somebody else present, so hopefully you'll forgive me for filling in. But the presentation tonight is 3 presentations that I brought together, so it's a lot of material. I've had to trim some material, so if something seems like it could have been explained a little better, it could have been. I just don't have the time. If you go to the next slide, we're going to have a series of lectures, probably 5 or 6 lectures. It's going to be disease decoded. So this is kind of a part of that, a little bit of part of that. And the purpose of that lecture series is going to be to explain disease, its cause, and how we got where we are. So how did modern medicine get here? Where did we come from? And how do we heal from illness? Now, tonight, we're going to delve into the topic of healing chronic illness. We're going to look at it as much as we can get into tonight. So let me ask you a question. Go to the next slide here. How many of you know someone, or maybe you yourself, suffer from a chronic illness? Probably most of us, right? You at least know somebody, if not yourself, and many of us have even went through it ourselves or are going through it. Now, how many of you have sat with a doctor and they've explained, well, you have this chronic illness, you have this autoimmune condition, you have this disease? Has a doctor ever explained to you, you have this, and this is the reason you got here? This is the reason that you have it. It really doesn't happen that often. Now, I'm sure there are doctors that are really good and do go that thoroughly into it. But the average doctor does not tell you that. And the reason they don't tell you that is that they don't know. They're not taught how disease happens. They're just taught that these are the symptoms. These are this is the profile of the disease. We don't know how you got here. Now, if they don't know how you got here, why you got here, then how can they have a solution? So if we don't know what caused it, how do we know how to diagnose it? Now, go to the next slide here, please. If we look at what disease actually is, the original meaning of disease comes from the French, which is a combination of 2 words, des and ais, or eyes, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but you can still see the same word, disease, which means des means without and ease. So without ease. It's the state of being not at ease. It's a condition of the body where the body is not in its natural state, right? But the meaning shifted, and over approximately 200 years, the meaning shifted to gradually mean something different from the body being out of ease to being a named entity, a label. So disease is no longer, well, your body is out of the condition it was designed to be in. Now it's something's attacking it. Or the common thing now is the belief that the body is attacking itself, or the body just did something dumb and stupid. Like it just, we don't know why, but suddenly the body's just doing something foolish. I don't believe that makes sense. But that's where it shifted. So for thousands of years, we believed that disease is the body not being at ease, which is what the word literally means. But then we changed the meaning of the word. And what happens with the changing of the meaning is we created a market for pharmaceuticals. So that's the obvious, where it ends up. Let's go to the next slide here. So with that understanding, the body's default state, if disease is the body out of ease, then the body's default state is health, right? So the default is health. And because we have so much disease in the world, we might think, for a moment, we might think, well, is that really true? But think about your life, even if you struggle with disease. Most of your life, for most people, now for some people, from the moment they're born, they've had to deal with an issue their whole life. So that's not the rule. But for most of us, most of our lives, we're not in disease, right? Most of your life, you're able to function, you're able to live, you're able to work. So the default state is health. And if the default state is health, then disease is the violation of that rule, where health is not able to be. And so here's a few interesting things on the screen. So every moment of your life, these things are taking place. So your immune system is continually surveying and neutralizing toxins and pathogens. It's dealing with defective cells and cell debris. Your liver is filtering about 250 gallons of blood every single day, and it removes waste and toxins so they don't accumulate. Your kidneys are processing about 180 liters of blood every day, and your body's doing cellular cleanup, where it disposes of molecular waste, which happens every minute that you're alive. Your body produces this waste. It's part of life. Now think about it in your home. So in your home, you have waste that builds up. So you make a meal, you have little scraps. You open a box, you have little scraps. Everything you do throughout your life at home produces waste. Now what if you never clean that up? What if you just throw it on the counter or you throw it on the floor? You never sweep the floor, you never vacuum, just dirt and debris just piles up. What's going to happen? A lot of things, right? But it's not going to be a fun place to live, not a healthy place to live. But we do that with our bodies. We expect the body to just be able to handle cleaning up and cleaning up and cleaning up constantly without breaking down. And then when it does break down, because we have subjected it to conditions that are not designed for, then we say, well, what happened? My body's messed up. By the end of this lecture, if I end on time, your body will have filtered approximately 15.5 gallons of blood. So I want you to think about that for a moment. While you're sitting here this evening, now it's probably not quite that much because you're sitting, it's a little more sedentary, but approximately around that figure, that while you're sitting here concentrating on listening to me speak, your body is actively preventing you from dying. Stopping toxicity, filtering, cleaning up, dealing with stuff. And it does it constantly. This is what your body was designed to do. Let's go to the next slide here. Just 1 second. My thing keeps disappearing. I don't know why it does that. Let me try this. Oh well, we'll live with it. All right, so this is Hippocrates, and Hippocrates is what modern medicine looks at, and modern medicine says, you know, we have the oath of Hippocrates. This is what we swear to do no harm. It's not really true. It's a nice idea, but it's not really true. We kind of violate pretty much everything Hippocrates believed in modern medicine to some degree. But it's a nice idea. But Hippocrates' view was illnesses do not come upon us out of the blue. They're developed from small daily sins against nature. And when enough sins have accumulated, then disease appears. This was Hippocrates' view. And Galen, to some degree, and then Avicenna that came after him, greatly progressed this concept, this idea. And I think fairly well proved it. And when we talk about sins, we say, well, what do you mean by daily sins against nature? So if your body is designed to live in a certain structure, a certain way, and you know it needs certain things to complete that work, it needs certain nutrition, it needs to be able to complete certain tasks. If we do things or we place ourselves in a situation where it is unable to do that, then it's a sin against nature. Because we're placing it in a position that it cannot do its work. And the body is designed by God to do that work. I'll explain this a little more in a little bit, because a lot of times we don't think about this. We think, well, I'm not sinning against nature, and we're not doing it intentionally most of the time. We're going to talk about what that means. Let's go to the next one here. We have to ask the question, so what are symptoms? Now, how we answer this question determines how we treat disease. So it's very important that we get a correct understanding of this. So let's look at the first column here. If disease is something that we look at that's outside of ourselves, okay? Now, yeah, I'll explain that in a minute. But if we look at it as something that's outside of ourselves, then the symptoms that appear are part of an attack against us, okay? So when we look at symptoms like fever, inflammation, fatigue, pain, then that's the problem. And so I need to go to the doctor, and I need to tell the doctor I have a fever. So what is this doctor going to give you? Yeah, an antipyretic. I have inflammation. What is the doctor going to give us? An anti-inflammatory. I have pain. What is the doctor going to give me? Yeah. One of those, you know. What does all those things have at the beginning of it? It's against a process of the body. Let's take fever, for instance. What is happening in your body when you have a fever? What do you think is going on? It's fighting it, yes. What did you say? No, fighting it. Okay, fighting it. Anyone else? So that's the general idea. Did you know that for every degree Celsius rise in temperature, that the speed at which your immune cells travel is doubled and the numbers increase? So it speeds up the immune cells, their ability to get where they need to go and to accomplish the task they need to do quickly. So your body raises the fever, and not only does it raise the temperature in your body, but it raises the, everything, right? But it raises the thermostat. And so because it raises the thermostat, that's why when you have a fever, you actually feel chilled and cold. You're not actually, it's just the body raised it up here. So your normal place, which is here, has changed. And so what normally wouldn't make you cold now does. Well, that's part of the reason anyways. And so in this process, so the body is employing means to boost the immune response. So if I stop that, what happens? What have I effectively done? Slow down the process. Have I done anything to stop the underlying cause of the reason for the fever? Let's talk about inflammation. What's going on with inflammation? What does inflammation do in the body? Let me ask this question. What is the purpose of inflammation in the body? Why does the body utilize it? Okay, so it's mobilizing those resources to an area. Yes, exactly. What else is it doing? There's something else that's going on here. If you have, trying to think of a good example here. Let's say you have some issue. Let's say a storm goes through and it damages your home. You have a construction crew come in and they're going to fix your home. Let's say you live right in Camden here. They might have to wall off an area to fix that, right? And in the process of fixing that, they're going to bring in some saws and equipment, and they're going to cut some boards, and they're going to create debris and waste, and it might look a little messy, right? If you were driving by there and you were to see this construction that's happened or this repair that's going on, would you ever look at that and say, I wonder why they're destroying that place? Would you say that? Now, there is debris and there is waste buildup and there is things that are even harmful. Like if you walk through there, you might trip on something. It could hurt you. But you wouldn't say, why are they destroying that place? Because you intuitively know they're fixing something. They're repairing something. But when we look at the body, we say, why is the body destroying itself? Why is the body harming itself? And we look at inflammation as a negative. And it does become a negative when it becomes chronic. You know, if you have people working at your house cutting up boards every single day for 20 years, that's a problem. You know, you hire them to fix the staircase, and 10 years later, they're still there working. It's like, what's going on, guys? That's a problem. You have to figure out what happened. Okay, I got to move along here. I got a lot. Fatigue. Let's talk about fatigue. What's happening in your body when you have fatigue? It's kind of linked with fever, but it can be linked with fever. So fatigue is interesting. Fatigue kind of goes along with fever and shivering and colds, not colds, chills. But when you have fatigue, your body is literally telling you, stop, rest, stop moving around. And the reason for that is because dealing with infection and dealing with things in your body is metabolically expensive. It costs a lot of energy. In fact, for each degree rise in temperature, the energy expenditure required rises 10 to 13%. So if you have a fever, it can be costing 20-25% more energy to facilitate that repair than normal. So you think about that and you think, oh, okay, so that's why I feel so weird when I have a fever. Because your body's expending this immense amount of energy and it's telling you, stop and sit down. And what do? We say, no, I'm going to take a fever suppressant and I'm going to go to work. Well, some people do. So we can understand why we feel disoriented in a high fever. Okay, moving quickly through the rest of these here. Shivering and chills. So in chills, the body produces it generates heat through muscle contraction and constricting the blood vessels to reach a new heightened temperature. So it kind of works alongside with fever. In fact, it can come before a fever. What's that? So you can assist the body with a contrast shower, which would do the work of chills and shivering without the metabolic expense. So you can preempt the body. So when you feel something coming on or you feel a little not so great, you can actually do a contrast shower, produce the effect in the body of shivering and chills that would precede a fever without that metabolic expense and without going that far. And sometimes you can actually eliminate the need for the body to go that far. Now, sometimes the body will say, this is great. We have a lot of house cleaning to do, and it will go full force, and you'll still go through it. So it doesn't necessarily mean it will eliminate it. But either way, it's going to assist the body. And the last two, loss of appetite. The body is literally telling, this is an easy one, right? The body's telling you what? Stop stuffing food in your mouth. Like, just knock it off. Like, don't you get it? We don't feel well. Stop eating. And so the body's saying, stop doing that because I'm going to take all the energy you would expend in digestion and I'm going to move it to repair. And this is why the studies surrounding intermittent fasting and sustained fasting show reversing cancers, tumors shrinking, just chronic illnesses disappearing in some cases. Because it's so powerful when you actually listen to the body and stop eating for a little time, fasting, and the body's able to expend all that energy to repair. But most of us never fast because we like food. It's very difficult to say, no, I'm going to skip a few meals. All right. Well, I'm going to skip the last one here. Let's go to... Okay, so this is... If disease is a condition of unease, then symptoms are the body signaling a need for help and telling us, this is what I'm doing. I'm responding to a problem. I'm trying to repair. I'm trying to fix it. Would you help me out? Which of those frameworks makes the most sense? The anti-framework or the assisting framework? The framework that says, fever is strengthening and empowering my immune system. I'm going to shut that down because it doesn't feel good. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment. The reason that we do this is because it makes us feel better quicker, right? If you've ever taken an anti-inflammatory, you've ever taken an antipyretic, if you've ever taken an anti-pain medication, probably especially, you feel better. And feeling better is something we like. And so we often do not consider the effects that it has down the road. We say, well, I feel better. The symptoms are gone, therefore the disease is gone, but that's not true. Never, when we use drugs to get rid of symptoms, does it remove the cause. Never. It just makes nature work harder and has to use different means. And that's why oftentimes when we use a drug, we'll say, well, it has side effects. Well, what are the side effects? They're the effects caused by the fact that that's stopping a body process here, so the body moves over here to address it. It's oftentimes the case, besides the fact that some drugs can actually have direct toxic effects. Let's go to the next slide. I guess we already talked about that. All right, so in the literature here, if you look at the review in 2020, they did a review of the literature on fever, and they found that in observational studies, that letting the fever run showed survival benefit, meaning that people who let their fevers run, less of them died. And in the randomly controlled trials, they found that there is no support for routine fever reduction in infected patients. And this is important because oftentimes we get scared, especially with children, and we say, well, we got to bring that fever down because it could hurt them. But it's not true. In the vast majority of cases, there's a very minor window where certain kids have an issue from birth, a congenital defect that actually prevents their body from regulating temperature. In those cases, it can be dangerous. It's a very rare condition, though, and your doctor would know about it. But in every other case, the fever is doing its job, so we need to assist it. The reason that fevers can be dangerous is that fevers produce... So when we have a fever, we sweat, right? So if we're sweating, but we're not taking in enough water, what's going to happen? It's kind of like a pan on the stove that you have water boiling and you go and you forget about it, and 2 hours later you come back and there's no water. It's burnt, right? And that's what happens in your body, and that is dangerous. And so a fever, a dehydrated fever is very dangerous. So you got to make sure, usually when you're sick, you do not feel like drinking water, especially if you have a sore throat and stuff like that. All right, let's go to the next slide here. We talked about this a little bit too. If you go to the next part here. So the medical system calls this atopic march, and it's basically this idea of when symptoms are suppressed, then things move. And so if you see on the screen there, it talks about if you use a drug to get rid of eczema, then it often will transition to asthma, and then we suppress the asthma, and then that becomes autoimmune disease. And this often, we can see that in the literature, this progression of disease. And so we have to ask the question, well, why was the eczema there? Why was the skin breakouts there? What is going on that the body's trying to detox from? And if we answer that question, then we can stop the cascade before it gets to the autoimmune disease, often. So let's look at a few drugs. I might not go through all these, but we're going to go through some of them. We talked a little bit about this, but this helps us to visualize. I'm a very visual person. So let's look at how do NSAIDs work. So this is like ibuprofen, aspirin, things like that. So they inhibit COX enzymes. And so the purpose mainly behind this is pain and inflammation, right? But it also blocks COX-1, which produces... which is vital for producing and maintaining the stomach's protective mucus lining. Go to the next thing there. Yeah, it's on there. And so what happens when we block the production and maintenance of our protective stomach lining? What do you think is happening? You get ulcers. So we produced an ulcer to stop the pain. Now, what if the reason the body was producing pain was because it needed to address something, and then the ulcer is something we didn't need to experience? So if we listen to the pain, and there's some cases, if you're out in the woods and you're working on a chainsaw and you cut your leg, I'm not saying just go home and just bear through it, right? What I'm talking about is chronic illnesses where we're trying to suppress what the body is doing, right? We're not talking about emergency medicine where there's something we need to address now. You're in a car accident and hit by a tractor trailer. That's going to require some medical attention that it's just going to be. That's not what we're talking about. It also supports healthy kidney function, and when we block it, we produce stress on the kidneys. And so each of these things cascade, and they produce this ever-widening circle of effects. And it becomes very dangerous. Let's go to the next one. I'm not going to talk about this long, but statins. So a lot of people are placed on statins. They are told, well, this will lower your cholesterol. Statins do not lower your cholesterol. If any doctor's ever told you that, they're lying to your face. They have no ability to lower cholesterol. The only thing they do is inhibit the production of cholesterol in your body, which is totally different. It's not the same thing. The cholesterol you consume in your diet is different from the cholesterol that your body produces. And if you're inhibiting the body from producing cholesterol, well, what are the effects? These are just a couple of them that I have on the screen, but COQ10 is one of them. And most of you, if you've done any research into health, have heard of this. It's heralded a lot now for viruses and stuff like that, but it's an important nutrient for vital mitochondrial energy production. And we inhibit that when we inhibit cholesterol with statins. It also messes up vitamin D production. It messes with the essential cell structure. It messes with the production of hormones. And it messes with the absorption of fats. So all this stuff is an effect of statins. And you say, okay, so that's the cost. Well, it has benefits though, right? No. You look at the large review studies of statins, there's no mortality benefit, there's no cardiovascular benefit. All it is numbers. And so they're basing everything on numbers, but the outcomes are not better overall. And the reason is because your body needs cholesterol that you produce that's regulated by the body to do functions. It should not be getting that cholesterol from animal fats and dietary factors like highly processed butters and even your seed and vegetable oils are harmful to the body in this way. And so the reason or the place we're getting it actually matters. Let's go to the next one here. Yes, absolutely.
So my father worked on that in NIH, and what they're finding is the people that are taking statins are ending up with dementia and
Yes.
Alzheimer's because, and they know it. They know it. The researchers know it. They don't let that over to the doctors. It's all about selling the pills.
Yes.
He said it from the very beginning. He said this should never be because our brains are 98% fat, and we're cutting the fat, which is killing the brain.
Yes, and we need to get our fat and stuff from our diet, well, from plants, and we can. God gave us nuts and seeds, which are high fat, but they're good, healthy fats. Like we should be eating walnuts daily or every other day. We should be eating Brazil nuts every single week at least. Ooh, it's hot. Yes, absolutely. So, and that's part of the cascade. We try to treat the symptom, which is high cholesterol, and we treat it by saying, well, we just need to lower the cholesterol. Well, it's a fact of it. And really what we need to do is recognize, okay, why is my cholesterol high? And if there's factors where I'm consuming things I shouldn't be, I can eliminate those. And there's a lot of factors. Stress alone can actually raise your cholesterol. So, but statins are never the solution. All right, so we're going to talk about proton pump inhibitors. I'm going to go through this quickly because I got to get to more important stuff. But this is an interesting. This is one of the most fascinating concepts in regards to this, in my opinion. So the conventional wisdom, if you go to the next slide, the conventional wisdom is that when you have acid reflux, it's caused by what? Too much stomach acid. That's what they tell you. most of the time, and you can call me a heretic for this, but most of the time it's actually too little stomach acid. It's not too much. And the science is starting to catch up with that idea. But just think about that for a moment. If the issue is really too little stomach acid and we're thinking it's too much and we're trying to address it by stopping it, what's happening? We went from too little to nothing. Let's go to the next slide. We'll see what happens. So, let's actually skip this. Let's skip through that slide. Let's go to the next one. The critical role of stomach acid. So, when we have a pH that's under 1, which is the optimal state, pepsin activates to digest proteins, vitamin B12, and minerals absorbed properly, and the stomach remains sterile. In fact, there's something very interesting. You can't see it on the screen, but it's a little farther away. When the stomach is operating correctly, the stomach acid in your body could actually break down a razor blade. That's how strong it is. So when you consume something that is toxic unintentionally, that stomach acid is able to neutralize that. And this is why if you're like a missionary in a country where the water is poor, most of the time it's best not to drink water with your meals. But if you were a missionary in a country where the water is questionable, if you drink with your meals, the stomach acid is actually able to neutralize that. So you're less likely to get disease from the water. It'd be better to clean the water up, but the stomach is able to do a better job of dealing with that than if you're just drinking. So a pH 2 to 2.5, mineral absorption begins to fail, and then above 4, you have this rapid ingrowth of bacteria, which comes in and yeast to address an issue. There's fermentation taking place because things are not being broken down by the stomach acid. Let's go to the next slide here. And so we have a cascade of consequences. And so we have kidney stress, the blood flow impairment, cellular damage, and gut lining breakdown. That's just 4 of them. We're going to skip the next slide. Skip that slide and go to the next one, please. And so the cascade of this is we get vitamin B12 deficiency, we get iron deficiency, we get magnesium depletion, we get the inability to absorb calcium, and zinc deficiency. And so all these things, because we took proton pump inhibitors or we're not providing the environment for the body to have the correct acid balance. And so it's very, very dangerous. And so the last slide on this one is we get bloating, we get undigested food, it's fermenting, it's becoming toxic, and then we get accumulation, and then the result is the body produces diarrhea, and so then we say, well, I need to get a medicine for that because that's uncomfortable. And then your proteins are not absorbed, and so then we say, well, I need a supplement to get all these protein isolates. And it's just this cascade. And the issue is oftentimes this, where if we fix the stomach so that the stomach pH is correct, you will digest and you'll absorb your proteins fine. Most of the time, it's related to this. Okay, so the next one, 2 ways of responding. So the first one is we support the body. This is medicatrix nature. It's the idea that healing is through nature. The healing power is in nature. So we say, well, the body is working. It's trying to address something. I need to help it. I need to remove whatever is blocking healing or standing in the way and supply what it is missing. So we trust the process and we assist it. The other mindset is oppose it. We must suppress it, destroy it, override it. And we define it and target it and attack it. And what's weird is we claim that this is a scientific method, but it's young. It's only been believed for about 100 years, maybe 200 years. We've kind of adopted that view. For the majority of human mankind, we've believed that nature is the great healer, that we just need to assist nature. And you think about this for a minute. Nature benefits nothing from us believing that. There's no flowers out there making millions of dollars because we pick them, right? But the drug companies make millions. So which one do you think has an incentive to convince you that they're the right one? Not nature. Nature benefits nothing from us believing that. All right, let's go to the next slide here. How is it going? So just some statistics here. 6 out of 10 Americans are struggling with a chronic disease. So over 50%, so 60% right there. 4 out of 10 have multiple chronic conditions. 70% of deaths in the U.S. are caused by chronic illness. 70%. And it costs the economy $4 trillion. We are the most medicated population and the sickest. And this is true. America is one of the sickest nations as far as nations that are, not third world nations, right? Which should not be. Yeah. Well, they're interconnected, right? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one, but I think we've mentioned this previously, but in 1990, Dean Ornish did a trial, and he put people on whole food, plant-based diet, stress management, basically addressed all the factors of disease as best he could, provided social support communities, provided exercise, and after 1 year, 82% of patients showed measurable regression of arterial plaque. And it's been reproduced over and over. You've got the forks over knife studies, you have China study. It's produced over and over, and we can tell this is the diet God designed for us. It's the diet of Eden. It is the diet we're supposed to be eating. Let's go to the next slide here. So, I know I'm rapid fire going through these. I'm trying to get through a lot of material. This is where I want. 2 root causes of disease. So, Hippocrates' view was that disease is the result of violating the laws of nature. Little violations that accumulate and then disease appears. So little sins, he said, against nature. I think that if you were to take that concept and you boil it down to 2 factors, these would be the 2 factors. So these are the 2 causes. The first is nutritional deficiency, or I like to say improper nutrition or inadequate nutrition. Either one's bad. And in America, we primarily have improper nutrition. So we're eating enough. We're just eating the wrong things. All the foods that we eat, a lot of the foods we eat are processed. They're all fortified. They're all stuffed full of chemicals. They have all these quote-unquote natural flavors that are not natural at all. We take our grains and we spray them with glyphosate so we can make sure that there's nothing that's nutritious left in them. And if we haven't done all that, then we like to genetically modify everything. And so our food, a lot of it is just improper. And so you might go to the store and you say, well, I'm going to get some whole wheat bread. This is good for me, right? If it's not organic, then the grain was sprayed with glyphosate. And a lot of times if you look at the ingredients, there's a whole bunch of crap in bread anyways. And it's also fortified with folate. And folate is a toxin. It's a synthetic toxin. It's not a natural vitamin. And it produces a lot of problems as well. I could go on that subject. So the first cause is improper nutrition and also inability to assimilate nutrition. Some people have that issue. And the next one is toxicity. Toxicity and waste buildup. So the inability of the body to eliminate waste produces disease. And these 2 things explain why you can have 2 people with the same condition and this person is able to do really well and this person doesn't. Because one person is able to absorb and take in the nutrition, or maybe they're getting good quality nutrition, and that one person, maybe their elimination organs are really good at getting rid of waste, right? So that explains why you have differing results. We're going to skip the next slide. We're going to go to we are deficient. So let me see here. Yeah. So in the federal government's ongoing survey, they consistently find that 90% of Americans fall below the requirement of vitamin D. And 50% are not getting adequate magnesium, and 40% are not getting adequate vitamin C. And vitamin C you have to take daily because your body does not store vitamin C like, what calcium or vitamin D or vitamin B12. Vitamin C you have to have every day. So you should be eating some citrus every day, or you can get, some cherries, or even potatoes, but you have to get vitamin C every day. And most people are chronically dehydrated. And we live in this state where we're not taking in enough water, and when you're not taking in enough water, every organ in your body runs on water. Excuse me. And this is one thing I struggle with because I work really hard, and it's very easy for me to get so focused that I don't drink enough water. So I know a lot of us struggle with this. And then the other problem is the water that we are drinking, if it's from a municipal source, it contains chlorine and fluoride and PFAs and a whole bunch of other chemicals. And so you have this toxic load in the water, and then we're not getting enough, and it creates a huge burden on the kidneys and the body. And so we have a double issue here, and this is why it's so important, especially if you're on a municipal supply, to filter your water. You should make sure you're filtering and get a filter that actually is able to get rid of the fluoride and chlorine. That stuff is horrible for your body. But even if you're on a well supply, like our well, actually, it's good tasting water, but it has I think it's manganese, and it's too much. Your body, a lot of people think that it's good for your body. It's not. You should be filtering that. Just get a charcoal filter, and get rid of that stuff. Filter it out. You're supposed to primarily get your minerals from your food. The large portion should not be coming from your water. You can get trace minerals from your water, but you should not be looking for your minerals from your water. It's a belief that we used to believe. It's simply not true. But yeah, you can get trace minerals from your water. So let's go to the next slide here. Talking again about what the body cannot eliminate. So your body has 5 elimination channels. You have the colon, liver, kidneys, lungs, and skin. Which of these do you think is the body's primary method of elimination? So the skin is the largest, the colon is the primary. So your colon's obviously the designed method. Unfortunately, many times the skin is the method that the body has to choose because the other ones fail. And so oftentimes we see this in children where they will have breakouts and stuff like that. And it's just a failure in the elimination chain, and the body's pushing it out through the skin. So you do not want to give them creams and stuff that stop it. You can give them a salve that will draw it out, but you do not want to suppress that or give them a drug that suppresses it because the body's trying to get rid of toxicity. If you have a breakout, that's toxins coming out of your skin. Let it come out. It's not good to leave it in your body. And the reason why the colon is failing is because we're not getting enough fiber. The average American intake of fiber is 15 grams a day. Now, how much do you think we should be getting? I mean, I have it on the screen so you can cheat, but how much do you think? Would you guess? If you just guess, would you say? Like 40, yeah? Traditional diets are 50 to 100 grams. These are, traditional people groups that we would look at and say, they were healthy people. In Tanzania, there's a group called the Hadza people, and they actually eat 150 grams a day. And then you have the Hunzas, and they've been studied, and they eat almost entirely plants. They eat a little bit of meat, but it's almost entirely plants. And they looked at these people, and they virtually had no heart disease. They could not find cardiovascular disease among these people. And it goes to show that we're eating stuff that's not food, that our body's not able to take in and deal with. And so the consequence is that it's a primary driver of the bowel being slowed down, and so people are not having the bowel movements they should. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. Nobody wants to talk about this subject, but you should be having 1 to 2 bowel movements a day, and if you're not, you have a problem, and you need to address it. And if you don't, you will have other diseases, because if you're eating 1 to 2 meals a day, Come on, you have to get rid of it. Okay, so enough said. We'll move on. And one of the things that happens too is, and this is disgusting, but if your colon's not moving and you're not drinking enough water, the body will pull the water out of the colon. Right? And so, yeah. And so it's a double negative. You don't want that. Let the body drink water so the body doesn't have to say, let's get it out of the colon. It's like taking water out of the toilet. It's not a good idea. We're going to skip through this too. We're going to move along here. All right. So our liver is overworked. And so there's differing views. Some people say, well, it's the colon and the kidneys are the next important. I think it's the liver. And the reason why I think it's the liver is because the liver has to deal with literally everything that you take in. Like, it literally has to address any toxin, and not only toxins, it deals with toxins and chemicals, but it has to produce the chemicals the body needs. It produces enzymes. So it's literally a factory that's like doing all this type of stuff. And so if the liver's not working, everything else stops. And so it's a really big issue. And the other thing is that the liver can sustain so much damage before it actually starts triggering the symptoms where we say, oh, well, you have liver disease. But before you're ever diagnosed with that, you've been struggling for a long period of time. And so you need to help your liver. You need to assist your liver. And one of the best ways you can do that is, like we just mentioned, with proper water intake and proper food intake. But if we go to the next slide, we're going to look at... okay, it's on the next one, I guess. I think I have some of my slides mixed up here, but I'll mention it just in case I don't have it next. But for the liver, it's milk thistle. It's one of the primary herbs you want to have. And if you have any condition, whether it's liver or liver-related, or your doctor says your liver's at risk, you should be taking milk thistle daily. You should just be doing it. It's a proven herb that protects the liver. It literally protects and helps the liver do its job. And so, and it's a very safe herb. Milk thistle, yes. All right, so when elimination stops, this is when disease appears. And so your channel's clogged, and so your colon starts to slow down. And then your liver has to take the brunt of that, and it has to try to deal with it. And the liver's not going to be able to keep up. And then the kidneys are going to start to see the effects. And then your lungs are going to start to see the effects. And then you're going to start to see the body trying to push it out through the skin. And it's just this cascade where the elimination channels begin to fail. And this is talking about in a normal environment, okay? If we introduce other toxins like glyphosate and chemical poisoning and toxic things we shouldn't be exposed to, it creates an additional burden on the system on top of the regular cellular waste. And so this cascade is the driving force in chronic illness, chronic inflammation. This is the driving reason that we have this issue with chronic illness. What's interesting to me, I thought I had it in the slides. I probably skipped it in one of the other ones. But I think the number is 150,000. If people would just eat adequate fiber, 150,000 people would not die each year that currently die from chronic illness. All we'd have to do is just eat a proper amount of fiber. And 150,000 people would... Oh, it's right on the screen. It's just on there. There it is. 150,000 people a year. So if we were to increase, every 8 grams increase in daily fiber is associated with 19% less heart disease, 15% less diabetes, and 22% less colorectal cancer. And I don't know why doctors don't tell people this, but if you have colorectal cancer, it's caused by the colon not working properly. 100% of the time. Like there's reasons for a lot of different cancers, but that cancer is caused by the colon not working properly. It's literally in the name. Colon cancer, like we have to get our elimination channels working. And it's not, like a lot of people think it's all about elimination, but your colon does more than just eliminate. If the colon's not working, then you do not properly process and absorb minerals either. And so your whole body works in union and concert together. And so if one thing is not working properly, everything else suffers. And that's why it's so important that we do not use drugs to silence certain parts of the body, because you will just create a cascade. All right, let's go to the next one here. This was an interesting study in the journal Cell. And they found that people who eat 30 plus different plant foods per week had significantly greater microbiome diversity than those eating 10 or fewer. And diversity of microbiome is associated with less disease and greater health and longevity. And the reason for this is that your gut, your entire gut, does more than just break down nutrients. So it breaks down nutrients, it helps absorb nutrients, and it helps neutralize threats. And if you don't have that diversity, then the body doesn't have as big of a toolkit to work with in addressing issues. And so, and 30 sounds like a lot. You're probably thinking, okay, I can think of maybe 5 or 6 plants on the top of my head right now, but it's not that hard. You can think of berries and fruits and seeds and nuts and vegetables and greens, and then it's pretty easy. Just 30 plus different plants per week. So some herbs I listed there for support of the elimination channel. If you want to actually focus on this, I would encourage you to do an actual colon cleanse. And if you want information on that, I can tell you some formulas to use. But these are some of the herbs that would be in those. So Cascara sagrada, it stimulates peristalsis. So it actually provides the mechanical effect on the colon to work on the elimination. Senna is considered a laxative. It's a broader than that, but slippery elm, it soothes and lubricates and it protects. It's an amazing herb. If you have any sort of condition where there is irritation to a lining, an herb like slippery elm or marshmallow root or even licorice are really good because they provide a coating and they soothe and lubricate. Slippery elm was an incredible herb. But both of those will assist in reducing that inflammation. And when you remove the irritation, you provide a greater ability for the body to heal. As long as there's irritation, it's hard for the body to work because it's got to protect itself. All right, let's go to the next one here. All right, here's where I had the milk thistle. So we have, for the liver, milk thistle, that was the first one. Then dandelion and Oregon grapefruit. Probably heard of dandelion. Dandelion root is amazing for the liver. And the last one I talked about briefly, but fasting produces autophagy. And this is where it's basically the body triggering a mass cell cleanup process. So it's kind of like years ago, we used to have something at the church we grew up at. I don't know, probably once a year or something, where everyone would come together and we'd do a massive cleaning. You know, people would do something in the back and they'd clean the yard up and fix things. That's essentially what this is, where the body is doing a mass cleanup process. But alongside that is it's cleaning up, but it's also recycling. And one of the things that I find fascinating is everything in your body, the body recycles as much as possible. It's very green. For instance, iron. Over 90% of your iron, the body recycles. So people with iron deficiency, primarily, especially in the U.S., primarily are not because they're not getting enough iron in their diet. Generally, it's not that. It could be if your diet is very narrow, but generally it's not that. You need copper for iron absorption in that process, so it could be copper deficiency. And it could be iron deficiency, but your body recycles 90% of it. Your body recycles almost everything. And so if we're giving it an environment to do that properly, then we actually don't need as much food as we might think. We just need a high-quality nutrition, and your body can use it wisely. So I might talk about fasting in a moment again. Let's go to the water one. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, so we'll skip that. Let's go to inflammation. The next slide, please. So, inflammation. We talked about this in the beginning, and we talked about the fact that the inflammation is producing an effect on the body which provides the environment for repair and healing, right? So, when we talk about these herbs, oftentimes they're falsely, and it's okay, because I get why people say it and use it. It's easy to understand, but some people falsely say these are anti-inflammatory. They're not. They're assisting the inflammation process so the body can stop it on its own. Does that make sense? Because the body regulates all this stuff. And so, turmeric. People take turmeric for arthritic pain, and compared to NSAIDs, which we just talked about, that cause other problems, it had comparable outcome. But turmeric has none of those negative side effects. So turmeric doesn't go in your body and start inhibiting these processes, even though sometimes we might think that. One of the interesting things that turmeric does is turmeric is a heavy metal chelator. And so it attracts and it takes heavy metals out of the body. One of the reasons a lot of people have chronic arthritic pain and joint pain is heavy metals. And so this is not the only mechanism it uses, but it's one of them. And so if you have heavy metals, turmeric can be one of the methods to help get them out of the body. And then boswellia, which is a sap, and it's a very interesting remedy. And it works well with flaxseed or chia seed. It's very synergistic in that effect. And then we have ginger. Now, ginger should be something you should be trying to get in your diet every single week, if possible. Several times a week would be great. And the reason is that ginger helps to regulate many processes in the body that prevent systemic inflammation. And so it kind of stops the process before it gets to that point. It addresses blood sugar. It addresses a lot of different things. It's an incredible nutrient. But it also assists the circulatory system, blood getting through the circulatory system to every area of the body. It works like cayenne, but on a much milder effect. So people who don't really like cayenne or don't feel like they do well with cayenne, ginger is milder. You're not going to feel that burn, but it will produce a similar effect to get the circulatory system moving. So these are great herbs. And like turmeric's a food, so you can get that in your diet regularly. We're going to skip the blood sugar one for lack of time. Let's go to the cardiovascular system. So there's so much cardiovascular disease right now, and there's two reasons that are primary besides diet. Diet's a huge driving factor. But our cardiovascular system is stagnant. It's not moving the way it's supposed to move. And so when your cardiovascular system becomes stagnant, well, what's the purpose of the blood? What's the purpose of the blood? Transport. Yeah. Okay, so it transports nutrients and, a host of things throughout the body, but it has to be cleaned, right? So if it becomes stagnant, then that time period between cleaning slows down. And as that slows down, do you think that that's going to get better over time or worse? So it quickly gets out of hand, and then our blood becomes stagnant. We don't exercise enough, and so we're not moving the blood that way, and we don't eat foods that drive the blood. And so here's some foods that really do help drive the blood. So hawthorn, anybody who has a heart condition or is suspected of having a heart condition should be on hawthorn. Now, you'll need to check with your doctor to make sure it doesn't interfere with a medicine or something. But I would do some research and make sure that medicine isn't interfering with the hawthorn. Like, that's the real issue. But hawthorn and milk thistle are amazing herbs. Hawthorn actually creates a wall of nutrients around the heart. They did a study, and it's a fascinating study. And they found that it creates this barrier of nutrients around the heart. So if you ever have a heart attack, your body is able to feed off from these nutrients, even though it's cut off, and prevent cardiac cell death. So it increases the time before cardiac cell death takes place. And so they found in the SPICE trial that there was 39% fewer cardiac deaths in the hawthorn group. It's an incredible herb. Just an absolutely wonderful herb. Milk thistle does the exact same thing pretty much, just for the liver. Very similar. Garlic, in a 2025 meta-analysis, this was 108 trials, so this is massive. They found that the average reduction was 8.4 on the systolic and 7.3 on the diastolic. So these are really good. Like, these are comparable with many drugs. And it also improves lipid profiles and fasting glucose markers. And the reason is because it's not arbitrarily going in there and inhibiting processes. It's fixing issues and addressing nutrient deficiency and helping assist in glutathione production. It's providing the nutrients for glutathione production. And it's providing the environment for the body to do its work. And so you have all these cascade of effects. When you take a drug, on the box it has side effects. When you take an herb, it's not usually on the box, because if they say that, then the FDA will sue them. But it should say on the box, may cause increased energy, may cause, the heart to work better. It may cause... The side effects of herbs are a cascade of beneficial effects. So it's like the opposite. And the reason why this is because God designed you, and then he designed the plants, and he designed the plants for you. So he knew what he was doing. So they're perfectly designed for you. The last one here is cayenne. It's one of my favorite herbs. And cayenne is associated, regular consumption of cayenne is associated with 26% lower cardiovascular mortality. And that was also a large study of 22,000 people. So it's a very, very, very good herb. And if you struggle with cayenne, start out small. Just take a little bit and work up. Don't try to take, a Carolina Reaper and gnaw it down for the first time. You might be writhing for a little while. Let's see here. Let's go to the next one, stress. One of the things that... One of the things I think that is underlooked at is the effect of our emotional state, our, what's the other word for it? It's on the tip of my tongue. But our emotional state has a lot to do with our health. And if your emotional state is crippled, whether it's because of depression and discouragement, whether it's because of hormones being out of whack, whatever the reason that produces the emotional state, doesn't matter. The effect is always the same, and it's a massive increase in chronic illness. In fact, if I was to say one thing, that if we were to eliminate one thing would produce an immense effect, it would be emotional, what I would consider unhealthy emotional states. And so there's a lot of reasons for this. There's a lot of things going on in our world. We lose loved ones. We have wicked things happening in the world. We have the government and the nonsense they do, increase in taxes and cost of living. A lot of things converge to create an environment that is very stressful, stress-inducing, that attacks us on an emotional level. And then if you have family relationships that fall down, break down, all that stuff comes together. And when your stress stays high, your body literally is unable to repair. And so you could be eating the right stuff. You could be, doing everything else. You could be taking herbs and stuff, and it's going to help. But if your emotional state is not right, and one of the things they found in a lot of cancers is especially hormonal, breast cancer, prostate cancers are really intimately tied to stress and emotional health, and really tied to relationships. And this is especially true with women, and the reason is that women tend to have stronger emotional connections. So the severing of those or changing those has a greater effect than it does on men, although they are finding the same connection with prostate cancer. And what we're finding is that these cancers are oftentimes associated with stress, where something happened growing up and you think that you dealt with and addressed with it and it doesn't affect you, it's still affecting you today. And so it's important that we make sure that we've forgiven people who have hurt us, that have wronged us, that have done things to us, that we've let go of things in the past, and not just said, well, yeah, I let that go, but that we've prayed about it, we've given it to the Lord, and we've actually let it go. If you think about that and it still hurts you, if you think about that thing that happened and it still bothers you, if it's hard for you to think about that person, then you haven't let it go yet. And I'm not saying this means that you have to let people back in your lives that have hurt you, necessarily. For instance, I had a friend years ago, and she was molested by her father. And I told her, you have to forgive him, because if you don't forgive him, it's going to ruin your life. But that doesn't mean you have to let him back in your life. He did something to you that violates and goes beyond something that, it should never happen. But you have to forgive him, and that's where some people struggle. They don't know how to forgive that person for that ungodly, horrible deed without, it seems like, well, I have to let them in my life or I have to hate them. It's an extreme example, but it's so important that we forgive. And the Bible says that if we do not forgive others, that God will not forgive us. And so it's important that we go through and we think about these things and make sure there's nothing between me and somebody else, because it will affect your health. I guarantee you, I promise you that it will affect your health. Let's go to, got a couple more things I want to cover quickly. Let's go to the lymphatic system here. I'll just mention briefly. One of the things for stress that works really well is ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is an incredible herb. But it doesn't fix what I just mentioned. So you have to address that with this, okay? So they go together, but ashwagandha is incredible. Really, it's an adaptogen, really incredible herb. So the lymphatic system, let's go to that one, the next one here. So you have your circulatory system, and this we understand pretty well, the blood filtering kind of makes sense. Lymphatic system, I think people are getting more acquainted with recently, but it's misunderstood. For instance, many times I'll have people talk to me and they'll say, well, they found cancer in my lymph nodes, and so they're going to cut out those lymph nodes. So that's one thing that tends to be the popular idea. I want to ask you a question. Just put that aside for a moment. I want to ask you a question. What is the purpose of the lymphatic system? I have it on screen so you can cheat. What's that? Yeah, neutralize disease. Yes. So it acts as a cleanser. It acts as I'm trying to what? Filtration. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Filtration system. I was trying to think hose, and it just wasn't working. So it acts as a filtration system. Okay. So not only that, it deals with cellular waste, but it also is a highway, and not really a highway because it doesn't have a pump, but immune cells travel through the lymph. Okay. And what we have is lymph sentinel nodes. They're called sentinel nodes. Now, what's a sentinel? It's a guard. So the medical system literally calls them sentinel nodes and then says, yeah, we should probably cut that one out. So it doesn't make sense. So if the lymphatic system is filtering and it's dealing with toxins and waste, and that's one of the mechanisms of it, if we find cancer in the lymph or we find cancer in the sentinel nodes, does cutting the sentinel node make sense? Because the only reason that would make sense is if we believe the sentinel node created the cancer. We know that's not true. And we know that the purpose of the lymph is to filter and to address toxins, and cancer is a toxin, it's a waste. So it's where it needs to be. We just need to get rid of it. It needs to move. And so the solution is not cutting it out, it's moving the lymphatic system. And the problem with this is that the lymphatic system, as you probably know, does not have a pump. And so it does not move unless we move. And so you have to exercise, you have to bounce on a trampoline. Hydrotherapy does assist with this. But if you're sedentary, if you do not move much, and by not move much, getting up to eat your meals or to change a channel on the TV does not qualify, does not move the lymph. You have to move somewhat rigorously. If you're sedentary, then your lymph is not moving and it is accumulating toxins and waste. It's not an if, it is. And the body is so beautifully designed that it can go years and sometimes even decades where the body takes other processes and addresses things. And one of the processes the body does is it builds tumors. When you cannot get this waste out, when it cannot be moved out, the body will encapsulate it to prevent it from getting into the bloodstream. It will actually wall it all off, and then it will cut the blood supply. It's actually something the literature is finally being forced to admit that this does not make sense, that this is some outside force. Because in every single tumor they've ever examined, you have two things that should not be present if it's an outside invader. First, it's full of toxins, which walling off toxins doesn't make sense for something that's trying to attack us, right? These obviously should just be all through. And the second thing is they oftentimes are surrounded by our innate immunity. So our immune cells are actively working inside of this tumor. And so I know that's a little controversial for some, but if you look at the literature, you have what the medical literature calls granulomas. You can look it up. It's an interesting thing. And that's the simple version of a tumor. So it's the minute version. It's a little simple thing where the body walls off something to prevent it from affecting us. We can see this in the literature on the studies on asbestos. Asbestos, the fibers are too big and too hard for the body to break down. And so what happens is the body will encapsulate those, but they're too big. And so it struggles to break it down and deal with it, and it creates the problem, which we know, where we have these lawyers that, if you had asbestos exposure, you can get a settlement. But that's what was happening in the body, and the body walls it off, understanding that's a problem. But when it can't deal with it and get rid of it, that's the issue. And so we have to make sure that our circulatory system is running and it's pure. We have to make sure that our elimination channels are working properly. We have to make sure that our lymphatic system is working properly. This goes to our next slide here. Hydrotherapy. I mentioned this a couple times, but I cannot overemphasize the power of this. Hydrotherapy has the power in just a couple of minutes to move your blood in a way that nothing else can do. So you can take a walk and it will move your blood, and that's a great thing. You should take a walk daily. Hydrotherapy has an effect that not even that can replicate. So do both. I'm not saying one or the other, and one of the best things that you can do if you go to swinger is do a contrast shower where you do hot water and then cold water. And the reason is that you create an artificial pump, a pumping action, where you're pushing with the hot water, you're pulling the blood to the surface. And then with the cold water, you're driving it into the internal vital organs. And what do you think's happening when you alternate that rapidly? So it'll assist in moving the lymphatic system. It will move the circulatory system, so it moves that blood, purifies that blood rapidly. It increases your immune defenses greatly. Yeah. Activate stem cells. Yeah, the research on that is very fascinating. like the cold plunges they've studied. And cold plunges can be good, but one of the things that is important with hydrotherapy is to recognize that more is not always better. So, for instance, like some people do cold plunges, they'll think, well, I'll just do a cold plunge and sit in there for 10 minutes. You can actually flip it. So, yeah, where prolonged exposure actually flips it to become the opposite of what you're trying to do. So you got to make sure you don't do that. For instance, if you take a fever bath where you pour a hot water bath and you sit in it for like 20 minutes, you will sweat, and most of the time it will actually bring the fever down. It'll rise it and then it'll bring it down. So you have to remember that prolonged impact of water can have the opposite effect. But what we're doing is we're creating this pumping action which cleans our system. And so I highly encourage you to implement.
So like 3 rounds or something of hot to cold?
So if you've never done it before, start out with just do your regular shower and end on cold. Do 30 seconds of cold, do 45, do 60 seconds cold, whatever you can handle. You don't have to jump right in. The most important thing is to build up to the point. So that's what I recommend. And then, do 3 rounds next time. I think getting up to 7 rounds is great. And as you build up, I like to do equals. So I like to do a minute of hot, a minute of cold. If you want to do 90 seconds of hot and 45 seconds of cold, go for it. But try not to increase the distance between them. I'm not a big fan of doing 7 rounds of 3 minutes of hot and 30 seconds of cold because you're trying to create a pumping action with a contrast shower. But starting out, just end your shower on cold. And then when you're done, vigorously rub your body. Don't just dry off, but vigorously rub. Your skin must have a pink, healthy look. If it's white, it's not good. And a failure in this, where it's not producing that healthy pink, where you do not feel a warming reaction, is actually a negative. And that's why I prefer to build up, where you're starting with that, you build up, and every day as you're adding the levels, you are having that effect, you're having that reaction. Then you know that it's a healing reaction. So if you end the shower and you get out after doing the cold and you feel warm and invigorated, it's a healing action on the body. It was a good thing. But if you feel chilled, if your skin is white, then it failed. And so that means you need to build up. So maybe don't make it quite as cold or quite as long. So there's a few things to consider. One last thing that I'm going to say on the lymphatic system, and then I'm just going to open up for a couple questions, and we're going to close with that. I know it's been a lot of material. There's something called the glymphatic system, which is related to the lymphatic system, and this is something that is just relatively it's a new frontier, I'll say. But when you sleep, and it only happens in the fullest sense, in a deep sleep, your body does a glymphatic cleansing. And I actually think I have this slide. If you want to go, right there. So it basically does a brainwash, but not the way the government wants to do one. And so every night, if you get that deep sleep, the brain is being washed of all this neurotoxic waste. Now, think if that doesn't happen, if you're not sleeping well at night, or if you stay up late, then it's never being washed, it's never being cleaned. You're going to produce cognitive decline because the body can only do this so long. And so I want you to think about that. Sleep is one thing it's very easy for us to let go of because we have lights and we have abundance of things that we need to get done at night. But it's not the best for our health. The most important thing I want to leave you with tonight I know it's been a lot of information. Usually this is several lectures that build on each other and connect. So I hope you're blessed by it. But I want to leave you with one thing, and that is that your body was incredibly designed by God, and it just needs assistance. And so your job is to figure out, what does my body need, and what am I doing that is preventing it from doing its job? Now, that is not to say that everyone who has an illness and has not seen healing, that we should look at them and say, I wonder what they're not doing right. Right? It's for me to examine my life and to say, what have I failed in? I'm going to give you a quick example of this. Very quick. Years ago, I used to work at a distribution center. And in the process of working there, I hurt my back. I had a couple bulging discs. And that kind of sent me on this journey to research health very rigorously. But in that process, I was thinking about it, and I thought, I eat a good diet. I'm a vegetarian. I exercise. Not on any drugs. Didn't do anything wrong. I lifted correctly. Like, there's nothing I did that caused this. And we had a presenter that came here and actually did a lecture on disease. And they stated very boldly that all disease has a cause, and that all disease is caused by violations to the laws of nature. And afterwards, I went and talked to her, and I said, this is not true, because I have this problem. I didn't do anything to cause it. So this is an exception to the rule. I know everybody else's problems are that, but that's not mine. And she basically said to go home, read a text in the scripture, and then she said to pray and ask the Lord to show you what you did wrong. And if there's anything in your life that, And so kind of bugged me for a little bit. But after I sat down and I thought about it for a little bit, I realized I would work at this warehouse 10, 12 hours, and I didn't drink enough water. And so I did some research, and I found out that when the spine does not have enough water, when the nerves do not have enough water, you create the environment that is perfect for these things to happen. And so I found out that it actually was my fault, that it actually was a violation of the laws of nature, not intentional. I didn't set out saying, I just don't care about my body, but I placed my body in a situation, in an environment, where it was impossible for disease not to happen. And I want you to think about that, because most of the time, it's not intentional. We're not trying to violate the laws of health. We want to live good lives. But it's things we're not thinking about because we live busy lives. And so, consider the things that are preventing good nutrition and absorption, the things you're consuming that are bad nutrition. And consider the ways in which we're inhibiting the body from eliminating the waste and toxins in the system. And I'm going to leave you with there. And I know we're out of time here, but I'm just going to open up for a couple questions. If there's anything that didn't get quite answered, if you want to ask, or feel free. And then we will let you go home. And there's refreshments in the back as well, so please stay and feel free to. Yes. So you can't leave now. You have to have five. Yeah. So please stay in fellowship for at least a few minutes. But anyone have any questions? Yes.
On that last one about the sleeping, I'm not a good sleeper. I'm wondering, you didn't have anything on there to help us out with that one. I don't ever really go into deep sleep at all. The ashwagandha
That'll help.
is a great adaptogen. It can do one or the other. It can make you not sleep or sleep, but you'll know right away. So what is that, like a little pill you take or something? Yeah, it's a bun.
It's an herb. Yeah.
Sprinkle on anything.
You can take it as a pill or a tea.
Caps are really nice because it goes down smoothly, and you take a low dose. Not because they do sell them high dose on Amazon, but you want the low dose because otherwise you can always add to it. But it's very important to sleep, that he was saying, because the people that have sleep issues can easily end up with dementia.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of other issues.
A lot of issues, yeah. And so there's no like overdosing on all these different herbs that you're talking about.
So
Well, you can overdose, and
the
not overdose, but
you
you can work your liver harder.
Rand, would you repeat the question for the live stream?
the question was on the cleansing the lymphatic system. What are some aids for that? And we were talking about ashwagandha. You can overdose on anything if you drink too much water, but you have to go against nature to get to that point. So it uses wisdom. When you're talking about adaptogens like ashwagandha, you want to start out small and build up and listen to how your body's responding, because the purpose of adaptogen is to regulate and balance a system. So you don't just go in with 10 grams. You start out small and listen to your body, and your body will balance. But for deep sleep, the most important things you can do is during the day, get sunlight, get exercise, get proper water, and those things have the most driving force. The reason beyond that most of us don't sleep is stress. We have too much on our minds. That's just the way it is. I used to sleep like 2 minutes I was asleep. It isn't as true anymore because I have so much on my brain. And so one of the best things you can do is decide, I'm going to stop eating at 5 o'clock, and then from maybe 6 o'clock on or whatever, if possible, I'm going to put away phones, I'm going to put away the TV, I'm going to put away anything that is stimulating to the mind. And then a great thing would be to listen to the Bible or read the Bible. And I guarantee you, usually if you start reading at night, you fall asleep. So things like that tend to be good. But if you eat at night, especially after 7 or 8 o'clock, it's very difficult to have deep sleep because your digestion is working all through the night, and you'll be dreaming about your digestive system. So,
One thing with the ashwagandha, I always say you can start out small and then add. But if you start out high, it's harder to take away. Easier to add than to take away.
yeah. And the most important thing with all this stuff is just listening to your body, because you're designed by God with signals. And sometimes they're healing signals, but you don't always need to go full force. I mean, there's a difference between being at death's door and just trying to get into a better state of health. So, yeah.
But what about magnesium? With her, I don't sleep well at all.
Yeah.
Hardly ever. And I don't take naps, so you can't say I took a nap and that was why. But people will say, take magnesium, it lets you calm down and this and that. I've tried it, but maybe I didn't take enough. I didn't have success with that one either.
So magnesium's only going to work if you're deficient in magnesium. So if you're deficient and the deficiency is the reason for the lack of deep sleep or the ability to sleep, then yeah, it'll help. If you're not deficient, adding more is not going to help you. And if you are deficient, taking magnesium orally, the body is not really able to assimilate and absorb it. So if you are deficient, you really need to do it topically. And so one of the best ways is to get a magnesium that you just apply to like your feet, the soles of your feet. Your body will absorb it topically, and it does. The body works really well to absorb magnesium topically. So that's the best way to take it. But you generally only see a benefit if you are deficient as far as sleep. So
Randy, you're saying that ashwagandha would be better for Tina than the magnesium?
it'd be worth trying. I mean, adaptogens are incredible things. Yeah. There's several sleep aids. Actually, Faith has a blend. I don't know if you remember what's in it. Valerian, vervain, blue vervain usually. Catnip. Which, like catnap. But valerian is a popular sleep aid.
It's a mix of them, you're saying?
Yes, a mix of valerian. I think it's blue vervain and catnip.
Most things work better in the body when they synergistically.
Yes.
Instead of just
Yes,
one
absolutely.
magnesium.
Absolutely.
Makes the things the body's going to absorb better, and with food often.
Yes, yeah, oftentimes. There's a company called Gaia Herbs, Gaia, I think it is. And if you look them up and you look up sleep, they have two formulas. And the reason I like their formulas is they are they're not powder capsules. What's the other form it's called? It's liquid capsules, which are way better absorbed by the body. And those work really well. So if you're looking specifically for a sleep formula, they have 2 of them. You can get both. One of them will generally work for you. So that's something you...
Well, I was saying that, they say to sleep before midnight is much, you go
Yes.
to bed early, you get much more out of your sleep than you would if you know, cause like you mentioned earlier there, that a lot of times we stay up later and later because
Yes.
lots of things, we have, lights and, so it used to be where lights went out, you might read a little while by the candlelight, but then you went to bed.
You went to bed, yeah.
You only had so much time to. So.
Yeah, so absolutely. Definitely don't go to bed after 9, not regularly. It's not healthy for you. I'm going to close because I know that I've kept you a long time and I started late on accident. But I'm going to pray to close this out. And then if you have any questions, you want to talk to me afterwards, feel free to come talk to me. I'm happy to discuss. And remember that we will be doing a full series on this topic soon. So, our Heavenly Father, we are so thankful that you have designed us wonderfully. We're so thankful that you provided herbal aids for us. And Lord, we have come together tonight because we want to follow your way. So Lord, I ask that you bless each person here with the knowledge that is necessary for what they are seeking in health, and that you'd bless them physically as well as spiritually and emotionally. Because you promise in your word that it is your desire that we would prosper both physically and spiritually. And please be with us as we go about our ways. May we use the knowledge we have to bless others. And bless our time, the rest of this time in the evening. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you very much.